Right. We are unmuted.
Say.
I don't know.
You got a few more seconds.
You don't know who that might be?
I think it's Drew's.
No,
No, I know.
2 hour mark, we're out of here.
My router's.
Oh, yeah, it's 7 o'clock.
Okay, all right, we got 7 o'clock, so we will call the.
I was waiting for that.
That was a quick one.
Turn my alarm off. All right, so we got 7 o'clock, do it again for the TV. It's called the regular village council meeting in Northport for May 15th to order. Let the roll show that trustees Dean, Ager, Cook, Cavendish, Harper, and President McCann are present. Rubel is absent. And we do have our village manager and clerk in attendance for tonight. Welcome, Jared. Your
Thank
first
you.
meeting as our village manager.
Nice to be here.
Absolutely. Second item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. If anybody has any additions or amendments to the agenda.
I don't have to have it tonight, but I would really like to, at next meeting or sometime in the future, talk about creating a policy for how we select and appoint PC members in terms of what do they need to do so that it's all the same every time. Just because it's been
Based on-
different
Based on what
multiple
happened
times.
last.
Well, it's been different multiple times throughout the appointments, not just last time. It was different when I did it, when Virginia and Gretchen did it, it was different. I just think it should be consistent if
Sure.
we make a policy, and Jared looked and there isn't one, so,
Okay,
which is what I thought. I didn't think there was one.
got that down.
Yeah, you wanna have that up for discussion?
Well, we can do it
For
next time,
meeting.
Yeah.
because then there's time for
At the
people to,
Yeah.
Work session.
You've
Yeah.
been made aware, so, all right, yeah, we can work on a study session, work session. Hearing no additions, just, all in favor of the approval of the agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay. Next up, we've got the approval of the village council meeting minutes from April 10th, 2025. Any corrections
Just the one that you found.
other than Vincent Way and the last public comment?
I move that we approve the April 10, 2025 minutes with the one amendment.
Second.
All right, made by Cavendish, supported by Cook to approve the council meeting minutes with the correction. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, the meeting minutes are approved. All right, this brings us to our first public comments. Raise your hand, I'll recognize you. You do get 5 minutes. And with that, I'll open the floor to, just so everybody knows, Buster Dame is not on our agenda, but you are more than welcome to make public comment about anything here tonight. So just want you to know that that's more than welcome, but we will not be discussing it. It's not part of our agenda for this evening. So with that, go ahead.
I'll start us off with some Buster Dame talk.
There you go.
Okay,
Just name and residence.
yes, my name is Eric Coates, 712 Ransom Street. Good evening, members of the village council. First, I want to thank all of you for your service and the time and care you put into our community. I want to also thank the many residents of Northport who have spoken up and shown their steadfast support for preserving Buster Dame Park. The majority of residents that I've spoken to in the last couple of days have no idea that there were actual deed restrictions on the land, that it was just lore and myth wrapped up in Buster Dame emotion. But there indeed are two separate and legally binding sets of restrictions on Buster Dame Park that explicitly prohibit it from being developed or repurposed for housing or swapped for another parcel unless rare and complicated conditions are met. These restrictions apply to the entire Buster Dame property. There is no provision in this agreement that allows for a land swap unless new parcels meet strict sets of environmental, recreational, and public access criteria. And that has to be approved for a formal conversion process that has yet to be identified and announced by our village government. In addition to the DNR grant recreation use restrictions, the township adopted an exclusive recreation property easement on February 21st of 1991, which clearly states, the township shall use this land for public recreation purposes only, which restrictions shall run with the land. This document was then recorded with the Leelanau County Register of Deeds and is enforceable. There is no known legal process that I have been able to find, will probably find it, to override these easement restrictions without a formal release by the state, something granted only in extremely rare circumstance and almost always denied. These protections were put in place specifically to prevent what is happening now, to protect parkland for future generations. Even if someone believes they found a way to sidestep the DNR deed restrictions, how do you legally bypass the township's recreation easement? Now, beyond the legal case, I want to speak from my heart. Many Northport residents have made it very clear. They want to preserve Buster Dam as public green space, and they're right to feel that way. In our ever-changing world, undeveloped parkland is increasingly rare, and once it's gone forever. We cannot assume future leaders will protect what we fail to protect today because they aren't protecting what they protected before. Removing the park designation from even part of Buster Dam puts all of it at risk. Saying that the dog park will stay is a kind gesture, but it is not the whole truth. Once the zoning changes, there is no legal safeguard preventing more development in the future. This is a precedent-setting decision. If Buster Dam can be developed, so can any of our parks, and that's not a future I want to imagine. So tonight, I respectfully ask the Village Council, please consider removing Buster Dam Park as consideration as a housing development site. Please begin the process of enacting permanent local protections for all public parks and green spaces in Northport. And finally, I ask you to honor the wishes of the Dame family, the people of Northport, and the legal agreements signed by our township leaders. Northport would look much nicer without all of these black signs this summer, but the residents are prepared to keep them up, and more are on the way. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Abigail Charter, currently Lake Ann. For those of you who don't know me, I am Buster Dame's granddaughter. I'm here to speak about using Buster Dame Field for a proposed future housing project. For those of you who don't know me, I was born and raised in Northport. I grew up a block away from Buster and Jean's home. My mother, Buster's daughter, and my brother still live in Northport. My father and grandparents are buried here. My heart is in Northport, although I no longer live in town. I also grew up playing at the ball field. I'm sure some of you might be wondering why the Dame family is choosing now to speak. Simply put, no one thought to talk to the family before this all started. Imagine our surprise when Buster Dame signs started showing up in Northport and the reason for it. Well, I'm not naive enough to think that it was by any means a requirement that someone in the family be notified. It would have been the kind thing to do. That said, we are grateful for all the hard work Eric and others have offered or have put into saving Buster Dame. I recently attended the Northport Township meeting on May 13th and was told at that time Buster Dame Field was not going to be used for anything other than what it was intended for. We appreciate that statements and hope they continue to be true. I would still like for people to understand that my grandfather would be against using the ball field for anything but recreational purposes. We also respectfully ask those who have never met my grandfather to stop stating what he would have wanted done with the ballpark, especially on social media. My grandfather ran the summer youth program, rep basketball, and was a Boy Scout leader for many years, earning the Silver Beaver Award, the highest award a leader can receive. He proudly served his country in World War II, and that service was something he held close to his heart. Even after his stroke, when he could no longer do the things he loved, he rode around town on his scooter, enjoying town, and often making use of the public library. It was a proud day for our family when the ballpark was named after him. He spent most of his life helping to make the community of Northport a wonderful place to live. His philosophy was a busy kid is a kid who stays out of trouble. Buster would not want the ball field to be destroyed, and he would want it to continue to be used for recreational purposes. He would want it to continue to be a place where community can do all sorts of things, not just baseball. It's off the beaten path, and it's a great place to use when other areas and towns are not available. It's fenced in, and you're able to see all around it from any vantage point, which is perfect for kids who like to run away. Now more than ever, Grandpa would want green spaces in town protected. We understand the need for housing in the area, but we also need green space for the community. Buster's family does not support a land trade or any of the other ideas that have been suggested as a way to put housing at the Buster Dame location. In the end, what is going to happen will happen, but here's the thing, once the park is gone, it's gone. And that's a disservice to Northport and to my grandfather. Thank you for your time, and I know some of you have already heard that, but thank you for listening again.
Thanks. Anyone else in person or anyone on Zoom? Public comments? Unmute yourself. I can only see a few names. Looks like Carmen.
Hi, I just want to reiterate that to please respect the wishes of Northport residents and keep our public spaces, which are really hard to come by and are very cherished parks for the public so that everybody could enjoy it for generations. And yeah, as a side note, I do want to say it's really like I'm not the best public speaker. It's really hard to like sometimes find the time to show up and participate, and even finding the Zoom link was really tricky, I just have to say. But there's a lot of folks who wanted to come who didn't know about the meetings, who didn't know about what was going on. And again, I just wanted to say, like, from a transparency perspective, there's something you should double click on and maybe have a retrospective about. So, but yeah, thank you for your time, and please save our park. Thanks.
And just for the record, what's your residence?
I live in Cedar, and I'm in Northport almost every week, multiple times a week, walking my dog and at the dog park. I love Northport. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom? And if you no other takers in person? All right. Oh, okay.
Yes, I will. I'm Lisa George and I live at 7700 North Manitou Trail. And I'm also here in support of Buster Dane Park and the dog park, especially since I'm a dog owner. And I want to say it's been really wonderful to connect with a lot of people who are interested in keeping this green space, not just for the dog park and the ballpark, but also as a meeting place. There was a really great article in National Geographic just recently about towns and villages that have green spaces that are accessible to all abilities and all kinds of different ways to meet. And I want to say I'm just really grateful that I think we're connecting and we're making a neighborhood by supporting each other and trying to save Buster Dane Park. And it is accessible. It is one level. It is in the middle of town. And I can't tell you, if you haven't been there, it's all ages and abilities that come. And that's how we kind of keep up and connect, and we're making a community. And I think a lot of us are thinking we might show up here a little more often now that we're getting, just aware of what's going on. So thank you so much for all that you do, the service that you do for the village. We appreciate it.
Okay, if there's no other public comment, then we'll move on to correspondence.
We did have correspondence from the Abigail Charter and Alan Delzo.
Okay.
It's in your packet tonight.
His was brand new.
It came out late.
I'm sorry, they're both regarding housing.
Buster Dane.
Buster Dane, sorry. Thank you.
Yes, one's pro, one's con.
Okay. All right, that moves us on to our first staff report, item 6A, clerk.
And you have the financial report for the month of April. And just to note, all quarterly reports were completed, and I'm working on completing the Marina annual report at this time. If you have any questions, happy to answer.
No questions? I guess one is, how much longer do we have on the land contract for the Speed Breaker property?
Great question. We made our final payment this year, so
All right.
freeing up some
All right.
some revenues for next year.
Yeah, excellent. All right, thank you, Joni. Treasurer, is Dinah on via Zoom or no?
She's on vacation. I
Oh.
can answer questions if you have any for reports in the Dropbox.
Susan?
Are the signs for the social district standard signs that all social districts of Michigan use?
There's no real standardized format for the signs. It's kind of like the logos that are gonna go on the cups. Each social district comes up with its own design,
Okay.
but we made them basically just, looks like a pretty normal street sign. That's gonna go on
And it
post to be
was
determined.
copy edited, so everything's correct and punctuation and stuff.
I think we just saw them this morning.
Jim drafted
Yeah.
it before he left.
I saw one this morning, it looks fine, I didn't see any typos.
Just check.
And we did use our own logo. So
Okay, good. And I guess my follow-up question is, has the logo been designed for the cups yet, or is that still in the works?
We actually just finished one. I think it'll work. So now we just need to make them into stickers. But the real sticking point, I'm kind of jumping ahead to my manager report, but the sticking point with the social district is getting the licensees approved by the state, which requires a resolution from the village council for each participating licensee as a alcohol, a liquor license. So I've been reaching out to the businesses to notify them with some help from, I talked to Daniel Cotto earlier this week, and hopefully I'll get all those in. I'll stay in contact with them. They'll come back for a resolution. Once they have the resolution, they apply to the state directly for the permit. That's when those participating businesses will then be able to start
I understand.
selling.
But we can't resolve until we know who they are, and we don't know yet who they are.
Well, the
That's pretty obvious, yeah.
licensees,
Yeah,
well, we know the list. We know who has the licenses.
okay,
NPG, Fingers Crossed, Farrell's, Mitten, Garden Lake, Willowbrook. I believe that is the extent of it within the social district.
Yeah.
So that's what
okay.
I'm trying to solicit, and the more I can talk about it, the better. I'm trying to solicit their applications, because we only have one on
Okay.
file right now.
I have contact info for all those people.
Please send it to me.
Okay.
Hang on.
Can we do this at the study session, next Thursday or 2 Thursdays from now? I mean, are we allowed under the new village council rules to take votes at those sessions? It just speeds up, because time is of the essence kind of thing.
Okay.
And this is something normally we would call a special meeting for, because summer's.
For the resolution.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to take action on items at the
Okay.
work session,
So I think we
that's
should
totally
shoot-
within your discretion.
Let's try to make that a goal.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and we gotta get this going, or it's gonna be another year. I mean, not that it matters, but they want it, so.
All right, so next up is our DPW report. Chris's report was in the packet. He is online if anybody has any questions for him, but.
Yeah, I'm here if anybody has any questions, and to, I guess, kind of elaborate a little bit more on the social district. We will put them up when everybody's ready. Let us know. We have them in our possession at DPW. And if there's any questions about my report, glad to answer.
Just one question. Your report says the low water levels will provide us with some challenges. Bill Rosenberg's report says he thinks the water levels are up and all should be well.
I'll go with Bill's. With that said, I'm sorry. With that said, they have come up from where they were back in March. I think we see a rise of about 4 to 6 inches. Wouldn't you say, Bill?
Oh, maybe a little bit more than that, but then they were, with the weather today, it was down another 6 inches. I mean, it goes up and down like crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My biggest concern is the boat launch and people trying to launch boats that are bigger than they should be at that launch. That's my biggest concern. I think you echo that.
And there's just not much we can do about that, actually. So it's going to be an interesting season. So.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Chris? All right, that moves us into our marina report for Bill. Anybody got any questions for Bill other than the water level? Looks like he's got dock hands and needs one more, but
Can I make a quick couple of comments, Chris?
yeah, go right ahead.
Sure. So, firstly, I want to give a great big thanks to Jim Firestone, who kept the Hazarat bathrooms open and clean all winter long and did a great job. Jim is a real asset to our crew, and he's like, 86 or something. So Jim did a great job. Thank you, Jim. I also want to address the boaters' bathroom showers that we had epoxied. This is going to be a game changer for keeping those showers clean and sanitary. The grout after what 12 or 14 or 15 years and had become moldy and impossible to keep clean and was a real problem. So getting those bathrooms epoxied was a real important thing. We opened today. We are going to be operating on some reduced hours this summer to try and reduce some costs and kind of keep things in line with where the business is. The business is in the middle of the day, and we have some stragglers who come into the marina, later in the evening. But we'll be reaching out to them if they're coming in later. It makes no sense to pay 2 dock hands to sit for 3 hours and basically do nothing, just waiting and babysitting. And we're just kind of getting back to a normal marina that is not crazy like post-COVID.
Bill,
Yes.
what hours do other marinas stay open till?
So right now we are open 8 until 4 until maybe the first week in June. And then we're going to be going 8 to 5 during weekdays and 8 to 8 on weekends, on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, which is when it's particularly busy. And this brings us in line with Leland and Suttons Bay and Elk Rapids and pretty much what everybody else does. I think it's a good move. I really do. If and with a caveat, if we find that we get a number of complaints or concerns about not being open late, we'll certainly adjust that. But looking back on where our business was from the past couple of years, it's not in the evening. The evening is only bringing boats in who have already paid for their transient fees, and we're just sitting and babysitting.
Anything else for Bill? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to our village manager and zoning administrator. First report.
Yeah, thank you. I have included a lot in my written report. I won't address everything. I did just want to publicly mention a couple things like the spring solid waste pickup, which the council has acted on. We've really run out of time this year. So we're not planning on doing the pickup in 2025. But we'll have more in the budget for 2026 and have adequate time. But I wanted to make that statement publicly. That's what we've been telling people when they've called and asked about the spring pickup this year. So that's where it stands now. Social district, I just mentioned. I'm glad to hear that you want to move forward and take action on it promptly. So do I. Once I got started, I really wanted to make sure that we had that up and running in time for the busy summer season. So I'm doing whatever we can. Citizen of the Year. I understand that's something that is an annual thing presented at the 4th of July. Really looking forward to that. And so I just want to mention it, get people thinking about it. Whoever you're talking to, we'd love to see those, and that's something that we need to get done. If there's an action taken for that at the June 19th regular meeting, so that we can still have a couple weeks to get the plaque made and prepare for the presentation. Zoning, under the zoning administrator portion of my report, I wanted to mention short-term rentals, which is something that I have received some inquiries about. I think there's some confusion, maybe some misunderstanding. I'd like to sort of clear that up as best I can. Maybe there's some feedback. You can clarify anything if I'm misstating something. But following amendments that were made to the zoning ordinance last year, a short-term rental is now required to get a special use permit in all districts. However, that doesn't apply to ongoing uses. If there's a short-term rental in operation and use now, and that has been ongoing, it's considered a legally non-conforming use. We can't retroactively go back and apply the special use permit requirement. However, for new special use permits for short-term rentals, in all districts, so we're required to go through that process. And that includes a public hearing and review and approval through the planning commission. But I want to make that clear because I've had quite a few inquiries from people who have existing short-term rentals, thinking that they will now have to go through that special use permit process, and I just want to clarify that. It also does not apply to change of ownership. A legally non-conforming use will continue even with a change of ownership. Just wanted to clarify some of those points in case you're talking to anybody or you hear something different, send them my way. And I'll do my best to make sure we're all on the same page. And we do have special use permit upcoming, and I think that'll be the first time that a short-term rental has gone through that process. So I'm looking forward to it. The applicant's done a very nice job, and that should be coming up in June. I think that's about it for my report, unless you have any questions.
Yeah, I have a question. If I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
The one that's coming up in June, where is it?
West Third Street. Yeah,
Well, the special use is for planning, right? Goes to planning or,
correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's where part of the area that I'd like to do an overlay, not, but it's too late now. Depending on what happens at planning. But yeah, that's part of the town where I don't think we need more SDRs, but we're not gonna debate that tonight.
Yeah, it's in the zoning, so it would be,
I
if we
know.
want to change the STR stuff, it would be like
Whole west side of town.
a different thing.
Should be out of bounds.
Anything
I
else?
have one
Yeah,
more thing.
Go ahead.
It's not in your report, but I just wanted everybody to know that I have asked you to work on putting together a proposal or thoughts on a Facebook and updating the website or correcting that. And you've let me know that you can work on that for a future meeting, just because there's obviously already a ton that you're working on. But that I'm really eager to see, because we've all talked about this before and that we would like to see this happen. It's just been a matter of like, how are we making it happen and who is administering it and who is overseeing it. So I look forward to that.
Yeah, and if I could.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just briefly, I did put together a draft policy.
Uh-huh,
And I plan on having that for discussion at the work session,
awesome.
so we can get that started.
Cool.
And basically, I just think there's two steps to it.
Mm-hmm,
Discuss the policy, approve the social media policy, and then start the pages that you want to start.
okay. Cool.
Yeah. Anything else for Jared from the side of the table?
I just want to say thank you for having the agenda to us so early, and having this report to us.
Yeah, it was amazing having the
That
report
was
so early.
A big plus. Thank you.
Yeah, I commented to Jared individually, but I think I speak for all of us that we really enjoy the Friday afternoon reports.
Yes.
That's a new
Very
thing
much so.
and we really like it.
Yes.
So we hope that continues.
I will, yeah, for sure.
All right, if we have nothing else, we'll move on to our ex officio reports. First up is planning commission.
Yeah, so at our last planning commission, I don't know if the minutes, I think they must be done. Are they in the packet or?
You will be.
Okay, I was gonna say, I didn't see them.
Oh, the planning commission?
Yeah.
For
Minutes?
next week's planning.
No, the minute, yeah,
Yeah.
usually they're in the packet for
Oh,
council.
you usually have the draft at.
Okay. Yeah, anyway, it's okay.
Yeah. they will
But
have-
like, so we're working on the master plan, so we're doing it section by section, we do 2 sections a meeting, we did that and went over that. And then are getting that revised, Jane is working on the actual physical revisions once we've talked about it, and then I put it together in a finished format. And then, so we worked on that, and then there was discussion on the Fleece Road property rezoning, which has withdrawn their application. So I don't think that's, any questions on that aren't applicable anymore. And then we are looking at changing the meeting day for planning, because of us changing our meetings to the 1st and 3rd. Planning is typically in the 3rd week, and that would be planning commission one night and village council the very next, which would be very hard on the staff. And so therefore, I think we're looking at the 2nd week now, of the month instead of the 3rd. Correct? I'm pretty sure that's what we decided.
I think so.
I'm pretty positive, yeah, because that's what Jane thought made the most sense. And then we discussed also the, concept of a rubric for the different properties, village properties, which is on the agenda, so. If you have questions.
Questions for Laura? Seeing none, we'll then move on to infrastructure.
I don't have anything for this meeting, because I'm gonna get with Jared still on some of the other things, but again, there's so many things going on, so.
Sure. All right, Marina,
Yeah, the only thing, I checked with both Bill and Chris, park wise and stuff. The only thing that wasn't covered in the reports is they did a really nice job on the volleyball court. As
Oh,
far as
yeah,
it
it
was
is.
starting to get overwhelmed with weeds and stuff. They edged it back where it belongs and they filled it with sand and stuff, so. They did a really nice job there.
My kids already played on.
It's-
all right, any questions for Hugh? Regarding Marina, no? Okay, 8A, discussion items. First up, we've got our fiscal year 2025-2026 budget. And
Yeah,
the lead.
let me make a few comments. The only items we included in the packet tonight were the budget, the approved budget for fiscal year 24-25, and a budget breakdown that was presented in March. Showing year-to-date expenses where the budget stood through the end of December. I'd love to hear feedback if there's anything that, any kind of direction you want to give moving forward. Joni and I have really started to dig into it recently so that we can have a draft ready for discussion at the work session June 5th. I'd like to incorporate the finance committee as much as possible, practical, given the time constraints. That's not going to be as thorough as I would like it to be. We just don't have enough time before adopting it. It should be adopted at the June 19th meeting, so that it's adopted before the start of the fiscal year on July 1. And for now, as I've talked with some of you, I would just like to present more or less a status quo budget, taking fiscal year 24-25 and moving it forward. And I'd like to back out capital projects with the adopted budget, zero that out in the capital fund. So we're really just looking at operational expenses, see how that works with fund balances for an adopted budget. But then as you move through the fiscal year, next fiscal year, we can look at capital projects more closely. If there's anyone, I'm kind of teasing this, I'll suggest something that we may be able to look at with the grant opportunity upcoming. But even if we made application for that, you wouldn't find out for several months into the future. So I think it's best to just move forward with the budget for 25-26. It's basically just operational with what we're working with in 24-25, with some modifications based on what we know now. We know, for example, that we're going to spread costs for new financial software. Our current software is no longer going to be supported. We need to upgrade or move to a different company. That's a big expense, $60,000+ that will spread across funds. So something like that we can anticipate. We can make some changes now and incorporate as much as we can in what we're going to be presenting for the work session and for adoption. But other than that, I'm not expecting to make any kind of major changes currently. So again, that's subject to, whatever kind of feedback you want to give me. What can we do between now and adoption?
I have a question on the new budget software. It sounds like that's a lump sum. It seems like most of these companies now, like QuickBooks and even Microsoft, you really can't buy Microsoft Word now. You buy a subscription, for $10 a year instead of buying the program for 99 or whatever it was. So we're buying a lump sum program for 60,000 instead of, they don't offer like a subscription plan, because it's already cloud-based now anyway, so.
This is cloud-based.
Yeah, so you
These
wouldn't
new-
actually get a hard drive disk.
Right, these new software.
Yeah.
This new software is cloud-based,
Cool.
and there's two different components to the pricing.
Okay,
Part of it is converting.
yeah,
We need to convert to the new software.
so that's the lump sum.
That's the biggest portion of that.
Okay,
And then you're
that,
also,
you answered my question.
but there also is an annual.
Yeah, of course.
Recurring fee.
Yeah,
10,000.
yeah, and that's normal.
Right.
But it updates. You never have to do another lump sum payment again in the future. You can run it for quite a while.
Well,
in
until they no
theory.
longer support it.
Yeah, that's a
Which is what we're right into now.
Yeah,
So Tyler Technologies will we use fund balance software.
Yeah.
And we can use that for a long time, 5 years, 10 years, whatever, until they no longer support it. And then we're put in this position, no matter which company we're using, we have to do a conversion, which costs that lump sum.
I get it.
Okay, I have a question about something different. So do we know what the COLA adjustment needs to be or for payroll or salaries? Because that's something that typically has been discussed and is a question.
So right now,
Well, yeah, but
remind-
we need to know.
it's
2.5.
2.5, is that what we're?
Up on, yeah,
Okay,
and
so
that's
is that
based
what's
on-
being factored in?
yeah,
Okay, cool.
projection 20.
Yeah, okay. Well, and I knew because the fiscal year is different too, like if that affected it, I didn't know, so.
It was, we had a year where it was like 7.
It's
And it was a big
7.9, I
deal.
think, or something.
And,
Yeah,
and a
something,
lot of people freaked out, but I think we can handle 2 now.
yeah,
We're
that's like a normal.
Yeah,
We're trying to anticipate it based on what it's been the past couple of years.
yeah. It was at that time. when it happened.
Anything else for Jared on the budgets? It sounds like we're gonna get a product at the next meeting that we'll be able to discuss more thoroughly and make more recommendations or suggestions at that point, so.
Well, and you're hoping to have it up a few days ahead, right, I assume? So,
Yeah,
Okay,
my goal is always by the end of the week.
I just want at least a day to read it, so, Okay.
I'd like to definitely have more than that.
okay,
That's why I'd like to get those out week before, so you have the weekend, a few days, up to the meeting.
yeah, no, that's
Our
great,
goal will be to have that to you May 30th.
okay,
I hope you realize how much we appreciate that, but
Yeah, thank you. It's nice to hear that.
Absolutely. All right, that brings us to our next agenda item, the investment policy. It was noted in his manager report, and discussions I had with the manager. As you can see from our, pay sheet, we got a lot of cash on hand. That's not really accruing much interest. And the council did pass an investment policy, we just have really not acted on it, is my understanding.
It has not been adopted as far as.
Oh, okay.
It
So we
was
just,
reviewed, there was discussion. The council indicated support, but it was never formally adopted.
okay,
Can we adopt
Let's
that
do that.
tonight? I'd say let's do it, but yeah, can I move that we adopt the investment policy and depositor designation?
It's a discussion item for tonight, but I don't know how you typically want
It's-
to handle those.
It's been discussed, I think we can take action on it.
Yeah.
It's.
everybody had time
It's
to
old
review
business
it?
at this point.
Was my motion seconded?
I'll second.
All right, it was
Sorry.
moved by Susan, supported by Laura to approve the investment policy and depositor designation for the village of Northport. Discussion.
I have a question. Do we currently have any investments?
Nothing of interest.
Yeah.
Bearing.
Substantial.
Has discussion been had with our treasurer to see if she is comfortable making investment?
I think of it as a team approach. I'm not gonna just say treasurer. go.
Yeah, no, I don't, there's got to be oversight.
Yeah, we'll definitely
Okay,
do the team approach for sure. And I also think that's one of the charges of the finance committee.
Yeah,
Is to review the investment policy, the financial policies of the village. So I would expect discussion and some consensus about how those investments would be. Not something that would be individual, although that is how it's stated in statute.
right,
The treasurer has such and such responsibility.
right.
And if I may, the policy does lay out what type of investments we're allowed to make. I mean, you know, like, T-bills are good enough for Warren Buffett, they should be good enough for the village of Northport.
Not crypto,
I was told yesterday that the township has $1 million in CDs.
really?
Yeah, they're earning a decent interest. now.
Yeah, and so there's definitely the ability to make some return on our, like I said, our cash on hand, which in many accounts seems to be substantial. And the investment policy does say that it has to be liquid. It's not something that can be tied up for long term. Although in our discussion, we did talk about staggering some of those investments, short term, long term, because in longer term investments, there is more interest that can be accrued over time. But again, that will be up to the team and the finance committee to oversee that. Joni, you had your hand up?
Oh, I just wanted to add, this was talked about with our audit, and our auditors made some great recommendations that we want to bring to the finance committee and adopting this policy. The auditor said, where's your investment policy? And I said the same thing. We adopted it. And I'm like, no, we didn't. So, yeah. So I'm glad to see this completed.
Yeah.
Well, good vote.
Yeah, so, all right, so again, the motion was made by Susan, supported by Laura to adopt the Village of Northport investment policy and designate depositor designation. And since there's gonna be money involved, we'll go with a roll call vote. Starting with Edwin,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Hugh,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Will,
Yes.
and yes, motion passes. All right. Just write this down. Okay, next item is, potential use of the village-owned West Street property. This is something that has to be on the agenda. There was an email correspondence in the meeting packet. After the last meeting and, hearing all the support the council had, for housing here in the village, but also, the feedback that came from that West Street, rendering, of what could be done there potentially. I did reach out to John Stimson from Homestretch and both Larry Mobby from Peninsula Housing to see if there was any interest in that parcel. And obviously the email showed that Larry Mobby and Peninsula Housing would be interested. And for the manager and I wanted to continue discussions or take in any action, I wanted to bring it to the council for consent to make sure that we have your support and at least discussing and, seeing what they can come back with. But yeah, go ahead.
If you want to open it up.
Absolutely.
Of course, I support it. I don't know if it's the most economically viable. I'm curious why, East Seventh Street, that flat area, was not brought into the discussion. Or was it?
It was not in that email, but he is aware of that piece of property as well. And so
I mean, Jared and I went down there and looked at it, and, one thing that's, it looks like it may be moot at this point, but, I don't think it should be in terms of whether anything happens at Raymond Hill or not. It sounds like township is not willing to do anything on that now, and it's theirs. So we don't really have anything to say about it, and that's fine. But we do have something to say about, changing the deed restriction down to the wetland area. If we did that, it only protects the trees in the wetlands. It would not prohibit an affordable housing 2 or 3 duplexes on what is currently, the hard scrabble, as I call it, the treeless area, the cleared space. So that's because they did, the DNR accepted the even exchange in terms of, what was financially equivalent. I guess it was close to the water, I don't know. We did the survey and we did property assessment values, and the DNR was satisfied with that swap, excluding that West Street, that 7th Street flat area. So we can do both. If they do want to protect that wetland in the future and switch the deed restriction down to the wetland, it wouldn't interfere in that in any way. Also, this, because we're on the subject, this is, that whole property down there at the end of 7th Street, that 7 acres, was on a deed restriction from the DNR. And in 2018, then Village Administrator Barb von Voigtlander just emailed the DNR and said, hey, you mind if you just take that off? And they said, sure. And they did it, they didn't require a swap or anything. They did it for free. And the DNR does this, sorry to say, Eric, but they do it all the time. They've done it hundreds of times, if not thousands of times in Michigan. It's legal and it's everyday business. So just moving the deed restriction is not a landslide.
Point of order, there was a reverter clause amendment in
Right.
2018.
Right, but they.
So it
the
wasn't just
DNR
an email, there was actual.
Okay, well,
public.
it started with an email conversation, and I FOIA'd the whole thing.
I
mean,
know.
It was very informal.
I wrote about it.
And, they said.
Well, we have all those in the reports.
Yeah,
So
and
it's-
the village administrator said, well, what can we do with the property now? The DNR said, anything you want. And so this does happen, it happens all the time. And the fact that they're making us do a swap, I mean, I'd like to see it put back into some kind of
I also-
conservation easement, but Little Mountain Conservancy is not interested because it's too small. There's other things we can do, but I'm getting off the topic.
Yeah.
I just my point was that the bottom of Seventh Street, I think, should be part of the discussion.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'll just, one of the issues there is the soil remediation, but that doesn't mean we can't concurrently do these both at the same
It's
time.
really small.
Yeah,
And it's just diesel fuel.
yeah.
I mean, it's no big deal.
That's
I
not. all it's
presume you
there.
misspoke when you said Raymond Hill.
He meant Buster Day.
Yeah, you said.
I said
Raymond Hill
Buster,
twice.
yes, I probably did.
You
I
said
said
Brandon.
twice.
I was-
Wow,
I
I'm
was
getting old.
Confused.
I'm sorry if I confused anybody. I didn't mean to scare anyone about Raymond Hill. Nobody's doing anything at
I
Raymond
was thinking
Hill.
of the view.
So, I have a couple things. One, I have a lot of thoughts on what you said about Seventh Street, but that's not what's on the agenda. So but I think that there's not a problem with pursuing West Street. I would love if there wasn't expense incurred right now, only because I feel like there's so many other sites, and I definitely think that it would be worth pursuing what's possible on multiple sites. The next topic, I have a bunch that I've been looking at too. So I just want to be sure there isn't a bunch of, like, I don't want necessarily an appraisal or something done without coming back to us, just because
Oh.
in case there's other lots that seem more promising first, I don't want it to be, I'm not opposed to that being, I would love to find out more and if they're willing to do something and what the costs or what they think once they're really looking at it. But I just want to be sure there's not expense yet, just because I think there could be other sites that are, who knows? I mean, there are other locations. So and maybe we pursue all of them. I just
Well,
want
we're
to be
getting into
sure.
the next
Yeah,
topic. I
yes,
think we should.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, this is I just wanted consent from the council that as the manager and I have discussions with Larry to, just see what he can come up with. Again,
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
not gonna be at any cost to the village, but I
No,
don't
yeah.
want people to think that I'm doing this on my own,
Right.
and that I'm, I wanna see things in housing get done. I just wanna make sure that everybody's aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
And that this will not come at any expense to the village. This is all just very preliminary.
I don't think any of
Conversation.
us
Yeah, no,
objections
you're
to
doing it the right way.
conversations.
So do you
Yeah.
want any kind of a voice like, yay?
I mean, if if there's no head shaking, no, I mean,
Yeah.
and everybody's on board with,
Yeah.
continuing the conversation, and then, that does bring us into our next, agenda item. So if the council is with me on that, I will continue conversations with Larry Mobby regarding the West Street parcel.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right, and so then that brings me to item D, the Joint Housing Task Force and Publicly Owned Property Inventory.
This is two separate things, right? Two separate
Not
ideas
necessarily.
that are both
It's,
about housing.
yeah, so this came out of the last planning commission meeting that, there was a discussion about, forming a inventory of the properties. And it was stated clearly, and I was glad, I think it was Janice, that, the planning commission, as appointees, their role is to, the property and the zoning, and the councils, represents the constituents. And so this would be an opportunity for, like with the 7th Street property, the planning commission to give us an objective, view of all these pieces of property that the village does certainly own, and maybe township properties as well, and give them like a criteria based, so that there is a rank and the pros and cons. And I'm sure Laura's got a lot here, so I'm just gonna, at this point, if she wants to speak,
That'd be
if
great.
anyone else has anything to say at this time, but she's gonna dole out a lot of information.
Well, I have just a quick question for Laura is, where is the planning commission as far as feelings about this? Are we stepping on their toes by doing this, or?
So the planning commission definitely, I mean, this was something I brought up as discussion because I wanted to see what people's thoughts on planning was about doing something like this and putting something together and bringing it to council, seeing what your guys' thoughts are, because we don't want to do something that we aren't charged to do. But we thought it could be, think it could be really helpful because, and for my proposal, we weren't necessarily ranking them. It's more just outlining them all so that either the council can look at it and determine, or if people want us to rank it, but kind of with 7th Street, it also wasn't ranked. I mean, it was just turned over and the council was able to decide what they wanted. And Mike on the commission had suggested, oh, maybe we could use the Joint Housing Task Force that had been talked about in the past. That wasn't my idea, but I do think that it's not impossible to do it that way. However, I do have already a draft that I had done that I think we could potentially use and review and see if that fits and people want to do it so that we can do it sooner. Because really my thought process was taking all of the public discourse and the different conversations that are happening and pulling it together in a public meeting so that people can watch and see what's being decided and what we're saying, like this one doesn't have water, this one doesn't have, this one's sewer, this one, you know, just like these basic things.
Wait, I got it. I mean, I'm confused on the agenda item because I don't know what you're talking about. Because I thought we were supposed to be discussing creating the joint housing task force and,
That was something that we could, I mean, that was something that could happen, yes, that we could decide
okay, I
and
don't think,
form that if we
They're
want.
separate. The planning commission has already, Laura and the planning commission has already come up with this idea, and Laura's got a rubric that she's come up with.
okay, but do we want,
So the planning commission could be given the go-ahead to do this inventory, and the joint housing commission could be there is no
the
commission.
carts before the horse, in my opinion, don't we want to decide if we want the planning commission to do this or if we want to create
Yes.
this joint housing commission to do this instead of the planning commission and then bring their information and suggestions to various boards?
Well, that's one option,
Well, okay, so
but the
it
other
looks
option,
like the planning commission is off and running already and
This is me, I did this.
I understand.
So it's not the
I-
planning commission. One of the things that we wanted to discuss is which makes more sense. I personally think that it makes more sense for the planning commission to do it. We are already familiar with a number of the properties from CIP projects and from the 7th Street reports. We can start right away and work on it. We absolutely, I think if there are members of the public or people from the township, if they want to do it separate, if we want to do it together, if we want to work on forming the joint housing commission and this gets given to them to compile with a township list. I mean, I think there's a lot of different opportunities while the housing task force is being figured out, if that's something that we want to do while we can still be making progress.
I agree with Laura. I think that they have taken the early steps. I would probably, if I were you, I would probably just limit it to village properties.
Well, that's, to me, I don't think it's our place to review the township. I don't even know
Right.
if they want to do the same
Right.
thing. And if the joint task force does want to, and the township agrees to the joint task force and they compile them or whatever, I also think that there are some private properties that could be considered, but it's not something that we would do publicly because we need to see if they're interested or not first.
Can I entertain something?
Sure.
Would you mind if we called upon, a planning commission member who's a member of both planning commissions who's in attendance right now to see what his opinion is on this?
Hugh, do you have an opinion?
Speak now or I can wait for public comment.
I think it's relevant.
I think if there were ever a time for the village and the township to cooperate on something, this is it. And there are township properties that are inside the village, which creates issues. There are village properties. There are township properties that are outside the village that could be candidates for this. There are privately owned properties that could go into the mix as well. I think this process needs to be thoughtful, it needs to be comprehensive and looked at from the village and the township overall. There's probably 10 or 12 different properties that could be in play for this, and they each have different characteristics, but I do think, Laura's made a great first start with this rubric of setting some evaluation criteria. There's probably, I haven't seen it, so I can't speak to whether it's all inclusive. That's okay. I'm not gonna opine on it at the moment, but I think, it would be good if the township and the village could evaluate everything on the same criteria at the same time and in the same process. And the best way, in my opinion, to do that is through a housing commission that takes people from both the village and the township and lets them work on it.
So has the Township Planning Commission had any discussion rooms?
Bare bones.
Yeah, and I don't disagree that we can't work together on this. I just think that it doesn't exist yet, and that takes a bunch of time too. And then that still comes back to planning or council to review and have questions or be sent back. And I think we just eliminated committees so that we don't have additional meetings that we're debating the same thing. And to me, those people can attend and have those discussions in the regular scheduled meetings that everyone's already aware of.
I don't know, I'm very much in favor of what he said. I think this is imperative that we form this commission as soon as possible. For those reasons, I also would like to point out that the planning commission has its hands full with a lot of other stuff. And that the planning commission doesn't have a track record of moving particularly fast on things. It took us 3 years to get through that water court debacle. And I think a slimmed down, agile, possibly OMA non-required board could, yeah.
I don't think so.
Well, I think they would have a lot more flexibility to meet more often and get a lot more done. The OMA question is, neither here nor there, but.
I think it
it's
is here
possible.
and there because the point is transparency.
I got the idea from Ty Wessel, so it's, it's,
That's,
Can I speak for a second?
yeah,
So Supervisor Conley just shared an email with the village manager and I. She had a discussion with Josh Mills from Frankfurt.
Yeah.
And they do have a
Yeah.
housing commission in place,
yes,
which is bound by Open Meetings Act. It's like a planning commission. They can actually purchase property, own property. And their makeup is 5 members. It has 1 city council member, 1 planning commission member, 1 county administrator, 1 person that lives in attainable housing.
right,
And then Josh acts as the administrator. Planning Commission member Mike McMillan forwarded to he and I also, all their draft ordinances that they have in
Yeah.
place. And the law firm that represents the city of Frankfurt is the same firm that represents us. So
yes.
we do have some of the paperwork that we could move through. And I do think there are some major benefits to the Housing Commission. Absolutely.
Frankfurt is the gold star of Michigan for getting the most done, the quickest on this. And municipalities that have gone through their planning commissions have not been as successful. I'm sorry. I think this is, like you said, this is the time and this is the opportunity, and we should follow Frankfurt's model because they're the ones who know how to do it. And I think sticking it to planning, another thing on the planning commission's docket is not gonna be the best way to get this done.
Well, I'd like
Go
to hear from Laura how fast, if you just sort of stuck to this, how fast could the planning commission act on this while the commission is being put together and people are figuring out?
and that was my thing. I'm not against forming the housing committee. I'm not. Like, I think that has a ton of value.
I thought that's what we
So-
were gonna be voting on tonight and not this ranking.
Well, it
of
isn't even a
properties.
voting. Isn't it a discussion item?
Yeah,
Well, we already
have-
passed a proposal. I mean, what would be the next steps?
That one was for whatever.
So I think the next steps would be determining who the members of the Housing Commission would be. In terms of like, so 1 planning commissioner from the village, 1
Right.
planning commissioner from the township, maybe a planning commissioner that serves on both. Would the president or the supervisor, I think having somebody who is in attainable housing, as few units as we have, would be critical to that as
I don't
well.
think it's somebody perfect.
Because exactly, there's someone who would, is housing focused. And so I think that is part of what this discussion either tonight, or we come back in 2 weeks at our study session and can discuss this more.
Okay.
About who we think these members should be. The Frankfurt model has 5. I think the idea is you keep it a little bit smaller.
That's what I heard, and
So that it's, not overly broad and can be more focused.
Right, okay.
And one of the big things was people that are willing to champion this and have the time to devote to it, because there will be work that goes into this.
Yeah, and then aren't like already tied up in a million other things, like a lot of planning commission members are. I have to correct the record, I misspoke. I know Ty's in the audience and he's probably like turning beet red right now, because I quoted him, and that's correct, incorrect. I haven't spoken to Ty about any of this. It was something I heard from somebody else and I attributed it to him. So I gotta clear that up before I get an angry voicemail after the meeting. I did not talk to Ty about one of this.
Can I answer the question that Susan asked?
Yeah.
Which is that my thought when I proposed this last time is that we could look at it starting next time. We're doing 2 sections a month at planning commission right now. That is basically what is on our agenda, especially with Fleece Road being retracted. And that our meetings have been shorter than normal. I mean, we are not going our full time right now.
Manager, any input or?
I, just listening and trying to absorb and kind of get a sense of how you want to proceed with this. Couple thoughts. Number one, a housing commission, has very specific statutory authorization. That's broad. It can include developing land. And so that, I think that's, and I'm just making these points not in favor or opposition to any particular idea, but I just want to point that out, that there's a specific intent and purpose for housing commissions. And that's slightly different, I think, than the way that this inventory has been conceived to date, which is more about having a broad understanding, a document that's a public record and publicly available, something that you can publish on the website, so that people are on the same page about which properties we're looking at, what's developable, what maybe isn't that's developable. So I think those are kind of 2 separate issues. And in my mind, and from my point of view, I want to move forward with all of these initiatives. So however you conceive of moving forward, I leave that to you. I'm just excited to have some specific direction. And that's what's really helpful from my point of view, is to have specific direction, for example, with the West Street property and the 7th Street property, so that I can start having these discussions and being able to move them forward more effectively, knowing what the council wants to see. So that's just kind of where I'm at right now, if that helps.
Absolutely. Susan?
I see this as research. This inventory is research.
Sure.
And if the planning commission wants to do it and has people who have the time to do it swiftly, I say, go ahead.
Well, and there
And
are.
this can be a document for the housing commission or the public or whoever.
I will say too, I've included the village owned parcels. Some are absolutely not applicable for housing, but I have them on here so that it's a full inventory, so it can't be like, oh, well, you left out this one, and why didn't you talk, like, what's wrong with this one?
Well, that's
So that
why-
it's clear,
That's why
so.
the joint commission is a lot more comprehensive, is because it can look at everything all at once. Whether it's in the village or in the township or whoever owns it.
Yes, but what I'm saying is there's ones included that already are definitely not, that wasn't my point, but is that there are ones that, for example, on South Shore, we own South Shore Road, it's very large, there's a bit at the end. Nobody is going to put housing on South Shore because it's the road or the very end of the road, but we can outline here and then it's obvious that that's not a good choice, and it wouldn't even go to the housing commission. Because it's not,
Okay.
they don't need to waste time on it.
What do you need from the council for you to proceed on the planning? commission?
Well, the thought was having a directive from the council to fill out a
Continue with
rubric.
this in the-
Yeah, and if there are revisions or things that people think,
I don't think the planning commission should be ranking them. I think that's for.
we weren't gonna rank them. That
Okay,
wasn't the
then I
idea at
just-
all.
then I don't know what you're doing
That
beyond
wasn't-
what
we
you've already
weren't-
done.
Because we gotta fill it in. And I wanna do that publicly so that everyone in the
Okay.
audience
Now
is
you-
aware of what's happening. And what, so that if there are people who are like, wait, what about this? What about that? You can go to this and see and say, no, these are the issues with that site.
Okay.
So,
I think it would be helpful. I've been having some discussions with Barb this week. They discussed a pilot ordinance at the function board meeting on Tuesday. She said that there was support,
Mm-hmm.
and it sounds like that's coming back at their next meeting, possibly for action. And so it would be helpful from my perspective if I could discuss with Barb the next steps specifically for what, for example, a housing commission might look like, or as was indicated in the resolution from last year, exploring the possibility of a joint planning commission. Those both things were part of the resolution.
Mm-hmm.
So the more specific direction I have to talk with Barb about how we can implement those, and as soon as possible, so that we're not just talking, we're taking some concrete steps. That's kind of what's most helpful for me. to move
Well,
forward.
I wonder too, if the planning commission fills this out and completes this, and then we aren't planning to rank, that wasn't something I was planning to do, because just like with Seventh Street, we didn't rank. I think that, we could potentially, it would be very easy though to see which ones now could be referred to the housing, which could be being set up in the meantime. And if the township is doing something similar, they can maybe rank them all together, and then maybe there's 1 and 2 spot is township properties, but 3 and 5 is village property, like in terms of overall, which are the best. Could potentially happen too, where the ranking is combining everything.
Okay, well, do we have a motion?
No, this is just a discussion item, so
I-
there's no
I'm
motion
for-
on the
I'm
table.
for letting planning run with this while we put together this joint commission.
Yeah,
I mean, and we have a meeting, what, next meeting? Or is it next week?
Next
Yeah.
week,
You
next
appoint him or
information.
What's that?
Joint committee?
That would be, again, that would, look to the ordinance about how these people, that's what I think we would need to, those are details that we would need to specify about how these people are gonna be appointed, because that's, like I said, that's what the Frankfurt's Housing Commission ordinance specifically states, who the members are. And so that would be, I suppose up for discussion
And I would-
between the manager and the township supervisor to decide who those members would be, which, so that there's equal representation from both sides.
Yeah.
So I think that would be
I
a good
looked up-
discussion to have with Barb, if you could.
Yeah, and it sounds like I'm hearing support from the
Mhm.
council to have that discussion with Barb, so they can come back and say, here's what we think would make sense as far as the composition of a 5-member housing commission, for example, and the next steps for implementing that over the next, that can happen within a couple months.
Sure.
Okay.
Is.
Well,
this
in our-
Also, like, my first question is.
Edwin,
Yeah,
speak.
For properties that have overlapping jurisdiction, who would be assessing, like,
So the ones that I have on the list, so there are a few township ones at the bottom, but I have them separate. And first, it's all village-owned properties. And then it identifies which municipality they're in. So the only ones that I was anticipating though, is that it would be the ones that the village owns. Unless somebody, I don't see how our rankings, for township properties and their decision, I presume they're going to want to do themselves or whatever method they feel is appropriate.
yeah, this seems like a great reference, just for, a starting point. It seems like too, when both the township and the village have filled this out, we can look at how much housing we need. And also like the difficulties, especially in the village, we can sort of like portion it properly.
Okay, so, do we want to give the planning commission the go-ahead to work with this document? And is this something that you can discuss at your next planning commission meeting
I think so,
about?
because we talked about it last time already, and it
Okay.
was that I was bringing it here to ask and see what the council wanted. So,
So should we have a motion?
Well,
Do we
that's
need
what I
a
was
motion?
asking. I don't think we need one. I think
Just council consent?
I mean, I don't see the harm at
Yeah,
this point, but I don't want it to stop or slow down the creation of the housing commission.
I
No,
don't think
I-
it needs to. I think they can both go parallel.
I'm good.
I think, so why don't you take this back to the planning commission for
Yep.
review?
And I will say one thing, Jared suggested that I put the future land use designation on there, so I'm gonna add that between the zone and the existing
That makes
structures.
good sense.
Yes, it does.
So this is a lot of work. Good job, Laura.
So, yeah.
Makes sense.
All right, that was a very good discussion, folks. And you have your directive to communicate with supervisor regarding the joint housing commission.
If I don't wanna, I don't know, throw a bomb in the discussion or something, but, part of the background leading up to this discussion has been, and I emailed the council yesterday about some of the incentives that are available now through statute with tax exemptions and pilots that don't require what used to be required for a pilot, which was a low-income housing tax credit that was approved by MISHA.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big change to statute, and it gives municipalities more tools to incentivize affordable and attainable housing. And I wonder if there's support to move forward with those independently, or perhaps just wait to see how the housing commission wants to proceed.
Well, we passed a pilot ordinance, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
But
But that's
it's,
specific to a property from
Oh, it was?
2015.
it was for the
Yes.
Woda Group project at the hospital.
Oh, no, this was recently.
This-
No, we did something under
Recently.
Dyer's tenure.
Yes, we did. I remember it too.
You might wanna check, I don't think we did.
I think it was
No,
discussion.
Joni would know.
Yeah, it was, and now you pass a broad pilot ordinance, and then each project comes to you for their pilot
Yes.
within that overreaching.
We
pilot.
need to get on that right away.
Yeah,
Those are two tools, and
I thought we already did it.
yeah, those are not
I think it was
currently
just
in place.
discussion.
We did
Yeah.
discuss it, yeah.
Yeah,
Would you like to see that brought back for more discussion?
Yes.
Absolutely. Seems
Absolutely.
like
Yeah.
that should be,
Mhm.
top of the list.
Actually,
okay.
seems you've already discussed it once, discuss it and then action item as well.
Mhm.
yeah.
Good point.
We did discuss the pilot ordinance with Jim some months ago, but it never came back to the council for anything
Okay.
like
We'll
that, so.
look and try and figure out exactly what the.
I think he wrote a draft
Okay.
ordinance. It's around somewhere.
Okay, we'll try and find that.
Yeah.
Copy the one in township did and change it to Village of Northport.
They're pretty standard.
Yeah.
They're standard because it's really each, individual project is approved separately
Mhm.
in terms of, granting a pilot or an exemption, depending on which statute you're working.
All right. No other discussion on that. We'll move on to item E, the village council goal setting meeting. This was something that the manager would like to set up with the council. I think this would be similar to our like retreat that we had
With Chet.
Jim
Yeah,
and
and
Chet.
Jim.
And I was at the township meeting the other night and Supervisor kindly said she reached out to Chet Janik to host like a meeting or work session with them and he said he would do it for free. I don't know if he would offer us the same
Oh, I think he would.
deal, but somebody to facilitate that between us. And I think the one we had with Jim was very successful.
Absolutely. I'm very much in favor of
Yep.
that.
So
Do it.
Okay.
I think the council would like to see you move forward with that and, work with whoever you want, but Chet Janik was a great resource and you get us some times and dates that we can try to coordinate on. I think we'll all be up for that.
We'll do.
Awesome. Okay, that brings us to new business. Item A is 4th of July firework proposal. And there's a motion in the packet, I believe. If you want to get that, then we can have discussion. Somebody wants to make it or I gotta get to it. I think it was in his.
Manager
report.
Yeah,
report.
I put a summary in my, memo. And you may wish to add to the motion, with funds available in the 4th of July fund, under the separate fund, fireworks fund.
I move to approve expenditures for the 4th of July event as presented with funds available in the 4th of July fund not to exceed $18,600.
I'll second.
All right, it's made by Susan, supported by Laura, to approve expenditures for the 4th of July event as presented with funds available in the firework fund not to exceed $18,600. Discussion.
Yeah, I think if I heard any comments last year for the fireworks display, everybody said it was too long. And this is getting to be a serious, we're spending more on this. People are like really angry that we're not doing curbside, large trash pickup. This is the budget for that. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but it's really getting, and I benefit from it as a business owner. All the business owners make a ton of money off this. The Chamber of Commerce, in my opinion, should be paying for it, but we don't have one, really, a functional one. So I think 18,000 is over the top. Personally, I'm sure I'm getting an angry stare right now, and I'm willing to take the heat to vote no on it. I'm sure it's gonna pass, but I just think, at some point, I'd like to see a drone show. I have to take my dogs out to the country. I'm not a fan of fireworks at all. I used to donate big time to it, and then I was like, what am I doing? I hate this. So, but it is great for the town. So that's what I had to say. I think it's too big. I think 18,000, it's never been anywhere near this big. It's just a lot of money.
Susan.
Can I ask you, was the show longer last year?
No, was actually a couple minutes shorter than the year
No, I'm getting
before.
old. Past my bedtime.
Laura,
I just want to say that I also would love to see a drone show, but I know that it would cost more than $18,000. So once drone shows become cheaper because there's more people doing them. But I also think that the cost is probably because fireworks are through the roof because of tariffs and whatnot, correct?
We spent the same amount.
Is it
You
the
already
same?
buy 'em?
Okay.
We have a
No.
proposal.
Okay, you got a contract, you're locked into price.
Joni,
If I might add, last year we raised, $10,000 in, private contributions towards that, so just want to add that.
so it does reduce our
Yeah,
costs. Okay,
And that will probably happen again. I mean, you're sending out all the letters, you're doing all the fundraising.
do we still put the, oh, we do a QR code now instead of the firework canisters, right?
We'll
I think both.
Okay.
Mhm.
Any other discussion on the fireworks? Okay, again, it was made by Susan, supported by Laura to not exceed 18,006 when funds become available from the firework fund. Roll call vote, starting with Will,
make me go first, no.
Laura,
Yes.
Hugh,
Yes,
Susan,
Yes.
Edwin,
Yes.
and yes. Motion passes. Fireworks will go on. Item B, appointment of the village council liaison to finance committee. As was in the manager packet, per the rules of procedure, the new finance committee, which will meet on a quarterly basis, will be comprised of the village president, myself, the village pro tem, which is Councilman Cook, and one council member appointed by the village president. And my appointment for this position would be our new council member, Edwin Dean. Spoke with him and he said he would be willing to serve on this committee.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
look forward to giving him a role. And if there's a, look forward to working with you on that. And just as I appoint him, you got to deal with it. All right.
I think
And
that's how it works, right? That's how it was.
that's my only
Yeah.
power left is appointing people. Giving it all to the manager. All right, so last up, we have approval of invoice for seal coating improvements at the marina, and that was for the showers. It was stated in Bill's report why it was necessary, and if you want to go ahead and make a motion, we can have discussion if needed.
I move we approve the invoice for the epoxy flooring at the marina, not to exceed $4,560 with funds available in the marine fund.
Second,
Made by Susan, supported by Will, to approve the invoice not to exceed 4560 with funds available in the marina fund. Any discussion? It's already been done, it looks great here,
Yeah,
so.
that's what I heard too.
Retroactive.
So, pay the man. All right, so since we're again spending money, we're gonna do a roll call vote, starting with Edwin,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Hugh,
yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Will,
yes.
and yes, motion passes. All right, that brings us to payment of the bills.
I move that we pay the bills in the amount of $96,373.02.
Second,
Moved by Laura, supported by Hugh to pay the bills in the amount of $96,373.02. Discussion.
I think somebody asked about this earlier and I was not following, but what is the Stephen Heather Craker payment? Is that for the property up on the hill?
That's for the 8th Street building,
Our new DPW.
Firewall.
Oh, okay.
It's the last
We now
one.
own it in fee simple.
and that was the last payment on our land contract with them, so it is now ours.
Okay, I got it.
One of the
Thank
best
you.
purchases you've ever made.
Absolutely. Any other discussion on the bills? Bond payment? Everything else is pretty standard.
Yep.
All right, no other discussion. Again, it was made by Laura, supported by Hugh. Bills in the amount of $96,373.02. Roll call vote, starting with Will.
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Hugh,
Yes,
Susan,
Yes.
Edwin,
Yes.
and yes. The motion passes. That brings us to our second public comment. If you'd like to make a public comment, 5 minutes, name and residence, and we'll recognize you. Go ahead.
Eric Folks, 712 Ransom Street. You all obviously put a lot of work in using Buster Dane as housing. It seems that all of you have a strong passion for protecting the Seventh Street wetlands. That's definitely a noble cause. You don't need to do a DNR land swap with a public park to attain that. That's what the council and residents of Northport want to do. There are processes and avenues to make that happen. The land swap for Seventh Street is only about freeing up the restrictions on Buster Dane to be able to build housing there. You've addressed the idea that you've already found a loophole, or rather that it's easy as an email sent to the DNR to free up the restrictions. I do believe, though, that the DNR swap process is more in-depth, requiring a formal public input session and satisfying a strict set of guidelines such as the swap being of comparable recreational value, which a wetland does not provide, among other stipulations based on my own personal conversations with someone at the DNR. But no one is addressing the second set of restrictions that the township adopted as a recreational easement, keeping the property dedicated to recreational purposes only, which restrictions shall run with the land. I look forward to learning more on that. Again, I urge all of you to respect the wishes of the residents of Northport and uphold the very land use restrictions that were put in place to protect the park from this exact scenario that we're in. Save our public parks. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll make one more comment. I think, perhaps there's some conflation of a study group and a housing commission. They don't necessarily need to be one and the same. One is the first step to the other. And just gonna go back and reiterate, I think a joint study group between the village and the township would be the most productive before. And just to inventory the properties, to describe them, to characterize them comprehensively, and then forward that to a housing commission, which is a much more complicated organism with lots of statutory requirements, lots of statutory powers. And that perhaps requires a lot more thought going into the formation of that than just the preliminary step of a study group.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else in Zoom? We got a hand. Oh, yeah, Joanne. Good to see you again. Oh, you're muted. Yeah, you're good.
Thank you. Okay, great. It's good to see everyone. At risk of sounding like a broken record, I just want to make a brief comment about the 7th Street hardscape area. Over a year ago, when you decided, rightly so, and thank you again for doing that, that the wetlands should be preserved, you had asked Jim to investigate possibilities. What are our options for the 7th Street hardscape area? And I don't think that was, at least I'm not aware of that having been presented to you. Perhaps it was, I'm just not aware of it. But some of the comments at the public meeting in March of 2024 were to reclaim that area, return it to its natural state. It's contiguous to the wetlands area. It's very close to Lake Michigan, the Bay. And you've had people speak tonight very eloquently about how important it is to preserve green spaces and recreation areas within the village. And certainly this small piece of land that's contiguous to the wetlands and the forest should be allowed to go back to its natural state, because it was only artificially hardscaped. And so I hope you will still consider doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Make sure there's nobody else. Nobody else in Zoom?
There's somebody raising their hand.
Oh, yeah, Chris?
Chris.
Muted.
Sorry about that. You know, I've been with the DPW for 11 years now, and we'll get into the whole born and raised deal. But my father helped build that building. It was on 7th Street, the DPW, in 1967, 68. You know, the wetlands has been delineated, and it's 6% of that property. 6%, and that hasn't been brought up. You know, when it was a DPW prior to my tenure here, it didn't seem to be much concern. And as we look at that property, I still think it really lends itself to be looked at a little closer. Utilities are there, the front part of that property, adjacent to 7th Street. So again, 6% of that has been designated as wetlands. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? If we have no other takers, we'll move on to council comments. Oh,
I
yeah.
just wanted to add my name and address.
Oh, yeah.
For the public record.
Sure.
Hugh Scott, I'm a township resident.
Thanks, Hugh. Okay, then we'll have council comment. Will.
Yeah, one thing about 7th Street that people don't realize, the DPW building was never legal. It was never supposed to be there. Right? The DNR just never enforced the deed restriction. And that was one of the reasons I think they lifted it, was because the cat was already out of the bag. I was kind of hoping that the North Shore Drive residents would be somewhat appeased, and this was kind of my motivation, my real motivation for, and it's not a land swap. Like, people calling it a land swap, that's just a totally misnomer. It's not the right term. It's moving a deed restriction from one piece of property to another, and I think the people on North Shore Drive would be somewhat appeased if that deed restriction was put on the sensitive wetland area, because I think that's what they're most concerned about. When the mud court thing was gonna happen, they were gonna cut down hundreds of trees. That's not on this board's agenda. That's not on the table here. It's never gonna happen with us, but I'd like to see those trees protected. And I think it's kind of a trade-off. I mean, they're gonna get maybe a couple duplexes around the corner from them in exchange for having those trees protected. And that's my real motivation for moving the conservation deed restriction down there. As far as Buster Dam goes, this board has no authority over Buster Dam. The township doesn't want to do anything with Buster Dam. There's nothing we can do about it. It's really not even anything pertinent to this room. I mean, that's their property. And also, we can't grab their deed restriction. They're gonna have to be the ones. It takes both boards to vote to move it. And if they want to offer it to us, we'll take it. I mean, I can't say that. We will vote on taking it. But if, I don't know why we wouldn't for those trees, but they have to be the ones. It's not us. We're not making any decisions. That's Buster Dam. Secondly, that's done on all that. I want to welcome Jared. I've had 3 meetings with him. Couldn't be more impressed. I think this board made a great choice and an awesome hire in this guy. I've got a lot of, I'm really looking forward to it. And the one thing, he's on my team trivia team and he's terrible. Doesn't know anything about video games, but.
We won.
I know, we did just fine.
And I answered the winning question, so.
Yeah, okay. I had to give you a little hard time. So anyway, the last thing is on the goals, for this council. I've been doing this for 7 years now, and when I started, we were like barely getting through, getting street sweeping and, mundane stuff. People would say, why don't you do something about attainable housing? And we were just like, we can't do that. We have a tiny little budget. We have no, that we have no power, we have no authority, we don't know how, anything. The fact that this is now the #1 topic of this village council is really, it heartens me, because I think we have a chance to really do something. Whether it's at West Street or 7th Street, or we can't, recycle center is not up to us. That's what the township wants to do. That's their thing. But if all those things happen, or any of those things happen, the fact that we can do even anything is such a far place from where we were 7 years ago that I'm really, really excited about it. It's making me excited about the next 2 years being on here. And I want to thank everybody on the council for getting to a point where we're not squabbling over little things and we're maybe getting some big stuff done. So, yeah, that's what I would say.
You.
Seeing as I'm the lead on the 4th of July fireworks, knowing how much time we put into that show, I found some of the comments tonight disappointing.
Sorry.
Anyone else? Yeah.
I also want to welcome Jared, and I am really excited. I can't even believe how much you've gotten done in the time you've been here already. And then I also, on Seventh Street, I did have a lot more that I would say, but it wasn't on the agenda. And I feel also very strongly that I want to get protections back onto that property, but I know that this is not the only way that we could do that. And then I also just wanted to say that I looked it up and the pilot discussion was on the April 13, 2023 meeting.
So it's been.
I guess.
Wow.
I mean, I thought Jim was here, but I guess not, because that's when it's in the minutes, so.
I would just like to, again, welcome Jared. He and I have had a couple of chats in the office and, you know, really looking forward to working with you over the next couple of years. And I also want to thank the council for their commitment to housing. And, again, nothing that Jared and I discussed with Larry, you will be informed of all of that and just see how things go. It's like step one of what we're gonna do here, and I think that we can do a lot. Because we are all so like-minded, focused on this critical issue, and so I just want to thank everybody for their support on that. And Susan.
Edwin and I also want to welcome Jared. Oh, and
I feel so well.
You also maybe feel welcome publicly, but we join with our colleagues.
You guys have all been great since I've been here, so thank you.
It's early.
Good.
All right, if there's no other comments, I make the motion to adjourn at 8:30 PM. You can support?
Support.
All right, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
I still have.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And if you
I
have.
didn't want to respond.